Hi there. My name's Dr. Paul Salay, and I am the KUDAR ANAMED Joint Postdoctoral Fellow at Coach University for the 2021-2022 academic year. I'm a cultural historian and maritime archaeologist focused on issues of economic behavior and maritime trade in the ancient Mediterranean during the first millennium BCE. I'm particularly interested in exploring issues of economic inequality, but not economic inequality as a standalone phenomenon, but rather as a way of situating and investigating the broader issue of inequality, more generally speaking. In particular, I'm looking to understand the ways in which economic inequality intersects with other mechanisms that reinforce and perpetuate hierarchies and power relationships and differential status. Recently, in part as a product of current events and in part as part of a long-term interest, I've become more and more interested in exploring concepts of race and ethnicity in the ancient world, and going from there to understand how those concepts in turn influenced our own modern frameworks of race and ethnicity. And then finally, exploring how our modern notions of race and ethnicity have affected the ways in which we look at, we analyze, understand, and make sense of the ancient world, especially through the lens of race and ethnicity. The current project that I'm involved in, and the one for which I'm engaged, is part of the postdoctoral fellowship, is really focused on incorporating two major recent trends in maritime archaeology. The first, that of the subject of maritime networks. In recent years, we've become increasingly sophisticated in our grasp of the development and complexity and nuances of ancient maritime networks has become vastly improved. I think this is in large part drawing upon some of the contributions of social network analysis, but also a result of far more sophisticated and powerful computing tools and data analytics and platforms that really allow us to ask questions and grapple with large data sets in ways that really would have been almost unimaginable even just a decade or two ago. The second trend in maritime archaeology that I'm looking to leverage for this project is largely the product of ongoing fieldwork in underwater archaeology that has revealed the presence, long-term presence, of persistent and sustained existence of regional shipbuilding technologies in the ancient Mediterranean. The general consensus of the course of the development of naval architecture in the ancient Mediterranean has largely been grounded in the seminal work of the incredible French maritime archaeologist Patrice Pomé, really working in the 80s and from thenceforth, that we saw in the ancient world broadly speaking, two different, separate and distinct shipbuilding technologies. One ostensibly Greek, the other presumably Phoenician in origin. But what this latest research has revealed has in fact been that we're seeing strong persistence of regional shipbuilding technologies, particularly two in particular. One in the northwest Mediterranean, in what is now southern France and the northeast coast of Spain, and the other in the Adriatic and Danube River basin. And it appears to be the case, all indications are that these regional shipbuilding networks persisted and coexisted with the two more dominant naval architecture technologies for upwards of a millennium. The goal of the project is, by juxtaposing these two types of evidence, to elucidate the connections between long-distance trade, maritime networks, and maritime connectivity, and the development of Mediterranean naval architecture. I'm interested in really focusing on three three specific questions in order to accomplish this broader goal. The first is basically, how did cultural factors affect the formation, first of maritime networks, and second, all patterns of technological change? In what ways were cultures receptive and or resistant to new forms of technology, and how quickly did they adapt or not, and what does that say about how the networks themselves persisted and developed and evolved over time? Second, what was the impact of economic activity during the period under question, which is basically from the archaic period up to the early imperial period? What was the impact of economic activity on technological change, or the lack thereof? Do we see technological innovation being pushed by growing economic development? Or do we, in fact, see in the reverse, technological changes themselves enabling greater economic development? This, of course, is a phenomenon that we're more than familiar with in the modern world, but we really are still trying to resolve some of these debates in terms of the relationship between economic development and technological change in the ancient world. And finally, by combining these different types of evidence, the hope is that I'll be able to ask questions of the evidence that wouldn't really be feasible or answerable by dealing with only a single body of evidence. I'm really looking forward, actually, to the opportunity of doing this at Coach University, in part because of the facilities at the university, also because of some of the work that the people at Coach University have already been doing, for example, in the Ancient Maritime Dynamics Project, which is already studying the formation and development of maritime networks and should provide a really powerful and strong foundation for the project that I'm engaged in going forward. I'm also really looking forward to being part of the academic community at the university, interacting with the other fellows, understanding their work, sharing the results of mine, and engaging in the kinds of discussions that I think are really a luxury of this type of fellowship. So if you see me around and if you have any questions about what I'm doing, or probably even more to the point, if you have any suggestions, I'm perfectly happy to hear any helpful tips that you think you might be able to give me in regards of completing my research and conducting it more efficiently. If you just want to grab a coffee, or if you want to talk about the work that you're doing, I'm all ears, because I'm really interested in seeing what the other fellows are doing as well. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing all of the other fellows, and I hope to talk to you all very soon.